So in the last episode, we talked a lot about my first film that I ever made when I was 16, 17 years old. And now, Dan, is our opportunity to talk about your first time. And Absolutely. I want to hear all about it. So tell us, what was the story? Give us some context.
So, shocker, I think I'm really bad at telling stories, despite my, work in film telling stories. But verbally saying them, especially if they're about me, I'm less good. But I'll try to think of the juicy bits as I go. But I'd been experimenting, making stuff for longer before making any film. So I was interested in filmmaking from like the age of 9 or 10. And my first serious film, the one that we'll talk about the process of the most, I imagine, was a film called End, which I made when I was 14. So I had a period of time between that age of like 9 and 14 where I was still making lots of stuff. Some of it did get finished. In fact, a lot of it did get finished. Some of it did not. The beginnings was getting a webcam. So I already had like a computer, and I already had not a camera, but I had a webcam that came with a set called the Lego Movie Maker set, which was intended for stop motion.
Okay, so hold on. I think there's a bit of time travel that's happened between my story and your story, because I'm old and you're not. Is that essentially the digital
Some things
revolution,
have been invented, yeah.
The digital revolution happened. So I think maybe give some context around this, because I do remember this happening where suddenly it was like, we talked about my stories of VHS and all that stuff, and no one had mobile phones, and then suddenly digital arrives and the availability of all this stuff. So it started with like handycam cameras. That was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I think my parents had they probably had a VHS camera to begin with, but then definitely went on to like handycams, mini DV cameras, which would go on to be like my first camera that I got. So yeah, that stuff was all invented, and computers as well. So I don't know what the computer, like video editing landscape was like. I imagine average at best. And I certainly hadn't even got into that side of things yet. But there was computers that you could do things on, and there was cameras that were more accessible. So you didn't have to, find the one tech guy at the school. It was more like someone's parents would have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember this with schools when we started going around, and 20 years ago, you'd be like, who in this room can get access to a camera of any sort to use? And I remember we used to get like in a room of 120 students, you get like 10 hands would go up, and then you go, okay, everyone ask them. But it was a way of saying, well, there's no excuses there. And then suddenly you're going into schools and everyone's looking at you like, what? It's like everyone's putting their hands up.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I remember that transition.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the moment people got phones that could actually record decently, which is, to really get to that point, you're talking like 2010 onwards.
But you were before that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That. Yeah, absolutely. So, we're talking like 2003 or so.
Oh, that's great. It's time travel. Here we are.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm in 2003. Mm-hmm. There's Dan Allen. He's 10 years old. He's got a handycam. His parents' handycam. Is that what you experimented on?
No, nothing yet. Just as a webcam. Literally, it's a little
like
webcam.
Eyeball.
Yeah, like that, but it's designed to look like it's made from Lego bricks. In fact, you could actually create a Lego rig for it, because it had like the connectors at the top and bottom of this Lego camera. So you could make a little tripod for it or a handle for it if you were so inclined. But importantly, you could sort of set it up so that it was looking at your Lego pieces. The entire concept behind this device was that you would be making stop motion films. So you would use your Lego pieces and move them one frame at a time to tell an animated story. And quite quickly, and I think I only got one because like a friend's brother had a set, and I loved it. I thought it was so cool. I didn't even really get to use it. I just thought it was awesome that they could make films, and obviously in Lego you could buy like Lego dragons and stuff like that. So very easily I could be like making fantasy films, which is what I was always interested in from growing up with like Jurassic Park, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars. So I had this Lego camera.
But can I ask? I'm fascinated. I'm loving this. Hold on a sec. I need to buy one for my son. Which is probably going to do now. But so did it? How did you? What did it record onto? Because I mean, these are the days we still had like DV tapes. You still needed tapes. So what were you recording onto?
This would go straight to the computer. So you would literally have to press a button on the computer to capture a frame. And you would capture one frame at a time on the computer, but it also had a mode where you could record video. So you wouldn't just take a picture, you could just record video straight into Lego Movie Maker as well. I don't know what files it's recording, but ones that Lego Movie Maker could.
Amazing. That sounds space age, but my first experience was we're in space age territory. Yeah. This is great. Okay, I'm loving it. So you're playing around, so you were doing early stop motion stuff?
Yeah. Well, I tried, but I didn't have the patience for stop motion, and very quickly I realized that stop motion wasn't for me. I would constantly get re-excited by the idea of stop motion, do it for about an hour or so, and then give up, just because nothing I made was any good, and it was all jumpy. And I was an OCD perfectionist as a kid. I used to bother me that my Power Ranger wristwatch wiggled ever so slightly on my wrist because it didn't wiggle on their wrists when I watched the TV show. So it used to, stuff like that used to drive me nuts. So you can imagine me trying to make stop motion and being like, it just doesn't look like a movie, does it? In my head, I was thinking probably like, these Lego people don't even look real, which obviously I think, not.
But that is an important moment, right? Because we've talked about that and I had that same experience in young people that we see where when they go out to do it themselves for the first time, they have a very high frame of reference because the only things they've seen previously are movies, TV shows, right? Which is all professional and done by lots of people and funds and resources, and they all know what they're doing. And so there's that tendency to get down when you watch the first thing, you go, well, that doesn't look like it. But don't give up, people, because that's how everyone starts. Even Dan Allen. Absolutely.
And to do stop motion properly as well, you need to do some maths. You need to work out if this character is going to take a second to travel from one side of the screen to the other, then that's, I say 25 frames because that's what it is in the UK, but probably in stop motion it's only like 12 frames. But I never worked out what the frames per second were. I wasn't even familiar with that concept. So I'd spend ages making a character walk from one side of the screen to the other. And then they'd do it in like a blink of an eye. And I just was like, well, it's too fast. So then I'd try and do it slower. Like as a 9-year-old, you're not breaking down, okay, well, if he needs to be at this point by frame 12 and he needs to be at this point by frame 25. Like I wasn't doing those maths. All I knew was that whatever I did, it was too quick and it wasn't playing smoothly for sure. So
you were creating something, right? And that's the joy. It's that spirit of young people where they just want to create something, and you were doing it.
Absolutely. But once I realized I could record video on it, that's where things sort of changed. And Harry Potter was coming out around that time as well. So in fact, it was probably like the third. I think the trailer had dropped for the third Harry Potter. And I tried to reshoot. I made a trailer for Harry Potter starring my friends shooting it on this Lego webcam.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
But bear in mind that this webcam has got a built-in USB cable.
To the computer. So you had to shoot everything within a 2-meter radius of the computer.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a 2-meter
had to be
cable.
Plugged in. And it wasn't a laptop, right? Or was it?
No. It was like a desktop computer. So it was like a tower with a monitor. And I remember I'd have to like pull the computer out as far as I could without it unplugging itself so that I could reach the window with the webcam and then just point it awkwardly out the window as much as the cable would allow, so I could shoot my exterior scenes, but they had to all be set in the immediate bit of greenery outside my window, which was painful.
But you were an early pioneer, because what's the wonderful story of the DP who works a lot on. He first did The Idiots with Dogma Lot, and he then went on to do, I think I'm right, and he did a Bollywood movie. Oh my! Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? What's it called? Oh my goodness!
Chris Tarrant. Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire.
Slumdog Millionaire. There you go.
Yeah.
And the DP who did the Slumdog Millionaire, whose name now escapes me, but he was very free, and he eventually developed for Slumdog Millionaire an eyeball on the end of a camera that recorded direct to a hard drive, so he could do this with his hand, which he found to be the most kind of naturalistic way, as opposed to having this big camera thing. So basically, you are an early pioneer of that technique.
Absolutely.
That's the way I see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, for sure. It was very, very tactile, and it was cool. It was really cool. But yeah, I shot a lot of Harry Potter scenes on that webcam, starring my school friends who, aged 9, 10, were very keen to play the characters that they'd been seeing in the movie. And I tried to cut together a trailer, which I definitely finished. I don't think it was that bad. That's my recollection. I remember being like, yeah, it sort of looks like a trailer. And again, I put like the logos, like the Warner Bros logo and the Harry Potter title in the trailer as well. But that was me pointing the Lego webcam at a TV screen that was playing the DVD. So it was all had like flickering down it, like the whole time. Whenever I'd cut to like a logo, there would just be flickering. It's, nowadays you can sort of rip and copy stuff, but back then, if you just had to point the camera at the TV and hope for the best.
Wow. Okay, so you're doing some experimenting with that. I'm loving this. You're attached to the computer, and you're doing. But talk us through, when did you decide you were going to kind of try something a bit more on scale?
So the next step was I got a DV camera. So I had the mini tapes, so like mini VHS tapes that go in the side. And once I got that, I could do anything. Now I can film in the stairwell if I wanted to.
Because you didn't have to be attached to the computer.
Exactly. It was a very liberating experience, James.
You go anywhere.
But I did have one battery that would only last about 45 minutes. So I could go anywhere for 45 minutes. And then I'd have to go back home and plug it back in to charge it up. But yes, then I filmed these very experimental films called with my best friend at the time, Josh Foe. We filmed these Josh Dan Adventures is what they were called. We also filmed with another friend called Jack Chappell. We filmed Josh Dan Jackass, which was our interpretation of Jackass. So we were being boys, but also doing sketches. So it was like it wasn't just jumping into bushes and trying to hurt ourselves for the sake of cinema. It was also putting on silly masks and creating these scenes, and they would be compiled together like a compilation film. Somewhere is a DVD of these. I found the case, in the last episode we talked about making DVD cases, or you made some VHSs. Yeah. So I made any project I worked on, I made a DVD cover for it. I found the case for it.
Didn't we all start I think we at one stage had a poster for I think we had a poster before we even had a script.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like, oh, well, what can I do now? And what can I get results in now? And it's like, well, I could make a poster. It doesn't have to have anyone on it. It can just have the title and,
looks good. Best bit.
The details. Yeah. A log line or a what's it called? It's not a log line if it's just, oh my God, what's it called? Or it's just like a
tagline?
Tagline, yeah. Yeah, one of those.
Like the line in Ed Wood, the movie, one of the movie is, you got a script? Hell no. Got a poster?
That's all you need. That's all you need. So I got that. Then I got a better camera. this is moving into secondary school now, and I try to make even better films. In fact, this is when I started to try and tell stories. I was starting to try and make stuff that was a little bit more coherent. So I did what all young filmmakers should do, is I tried to make a feature.
Brilliant idea.
That classic. In fact, I tried to make 2 features. One was a war film, in which I wrote a whole war film script. It was about a group of teenagers that had ended up stuck in the battlefield. So growing up in Essex in the countryside, we're surrounded by forests and trees. So we were just like, we'll just go into these forests, ignoring the fact that people actually owned these forests. But we were like, we'll just go into the trees and shoot a war film. And we shot a fair few scenes.
By the way, forests are great locations.
Great location.
The genius of the forest is you can point the camera in any direction and it looks like a different bit of the forest, even though you're in the same bit. That has been used by productions. Also, deserts are the same, by the way. Go to the desert, and you just go over that dune and you pretend you're in a completely different bit of the desert.
100%. And you can also add a subtitle at the bottom of the screen saying Vietnam, and then you're fine. Then your film's in Vietnam, you know.
You know, Stanley Kubrick's Vietnam War movie was shot often with Battersea Power Station.
There you go.
The sniper sequence is all in Battersea Power Station.
Wow!
He didn't like to get on planes. He wouldn't travel, so they had to find ways to shoot it in the UK.
Yeah. Well, his whole house turned into like a production studio, I think, at one point, didn't it? Or certainly like
he didn't like travel. What?
Me too.
This is great. But can I also say that this is really interesting? That thing of I now want to use this technology to tell a story. That is actually the same jump that happened in the early days of cinema, where, you know, the earliest cameras were basically bits of technology. They were science instruments.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Lumiere brothers going, and by the way, we should do an episode at some point about the first ever film, because there's now this big thing that wasn't, in fact, the Lumiere brothers who made the first ever film. It was an English.
We need to change the textbooks.
Oh my goodness, there was an English guy, and then there's actually a very dramatic story about a murder and blah, blah, blah. But that's a whole other story. But they were going out with their first ever sort of camera, their hand recorded at a station. And then the first supposed film is called The Train Entering the Station, which we show at Young Film Academy during our film history sessions. But it's, 20 seconds of footage of a train coming into a station. And it wasn't really till a bit later where people were like, hold on, we can now use those documentaries. That's all they were. They're pointing a scientific instrument at the world. And then the next step is, we could now use this to tell stories, but how? And basically you're having the same journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'd sort of become familiar enough with shots and the process of editing. I was using some software called Magix, I think at the time. Magix Movie. It's not Magix Movie Maker, but it's something like that. Magix with an X at the end. It's very cool. Oh,
but tell me about the war film, because actually Steven Spielberg made his first film, age 12, and it was a World War II epic, shot in his back garden.
Perfect.
And supposedly his mother played Hitler.
There you go.
Which is my favourite detail.
So my mum was in the second feature we tried to make. After we gave up on that film...
so that didn't get finished, the Vietnam
No,
film.
And I'm not sure why it didn't get finished, you know. I was very heavily like, I'd started to teach myself visual effects really early as well, so I could put in like really shoddy explosions and stuff. But I think I was struggling to get the core cast to keep turning up. So I went to the reliable cast members and said, let's make a different film, which brings us on to Backstreet's Sons of
The reliable
Crime.
cast members are family at this stage, or friends?
No, friends, yeah. All sort of school friends. Backstreet's Sons of Crime. I found the trailer for that the other day. Featuring,
that was the name of the movie?
That's the name of the movie, yeah. Okay. I definitely, made a trailer for it and filmed a few scenes, but didn't go anywhere beyond that. You know what it was? There was a really humbling experience, James. I say humbling. What I mean is heartbreaking. So Josh, who obviously was in Josh Dan Adventures Through the House, he was reliable and brilliant.
Loving Josh, actually.
And he put on a moustache. He put on the sort of moustache you get from Poundland. Yeah, and I'm not saying it only costs £1, the moustache. I'm saying it costs less than, because you go to Poundland and there's like 12 moustaches all on one sheet of cardboard. So it was worth 1/12 of a pound, this moustache. I thought it was pretty good. And he stuck it on his face, and yeah, there's a whole sequence where he shoots my mum. It's brilliant. And then and we bought these like fake cigarettes, these like Smithy cigarettes, and he like went to do the hit, and he shot my mum, and then went back to the car, and then like took a puff from this cigarette that clearly looked fake, and it was all dramatic, and this was all this one big opening sequence, and I was like, wow, this is brilliant. I was like, anyone that didn't like the last film I made is going to love this one. And I did a whole title sequence, James, like a whole title sequence with some Linkin Park music. And we previewed this to my form at school. So we all sat down during like form time and we played this film for them. And, the lights go off. And very quickly people started laughing.
Oh, my heart is bleeding for you.
Which you can imagine is devastating. But then here's the really confusing thing. I'm like, dear God, what have I done? The film finishes to even more raucous laughter. And there's not silence. There's sort of clapping. And then someone turns next to me. It's like, Dan, that was brilliant. And everyone else is like, wow, Dan, that's amazing. That's really cool. And I'm sitting there like, thinking in my head that, well, obviously not, because you were laughing, but they were genuinely impressed by the filmmaking and also by the very intentional comedy that played a big part in having my friend Josh wear a moustache and shoot my mum. And I went and spoke to the tutor afterwards, like my form tutor, Mr. Calvert, and I was like, can you give me some feedback? Because I'm a bit confused, because like it didn't get the reaction I thought it was going to get. And he was like, well, they loved it and stuff, but he was like, you've got to maybe have people play their own ages. Was the point he made. He's like, that's always going to be funny because you're having a kid play someone much older, and absolutely. People aren't going to connect with it. And it feels like what's that shoot 'em up with the kids playing adults?
Bugsy Malone.
It's very much Bugsy Malone, which the comedy is derived from the fact that you've got kids playing adults, which is what I'd accidentally created, even though I thought it was awesome.
And also, it's worth saying, when we do Young Film Academy, we work at 200 schools each year. We make films every day, and when people see someone they actually know appearing in a movie of any sort, their first instinct is kind of to laugh. And they're not laughing because they don't like it. It's a natural, very strong emotional reaction of like, oh my God, that is someone I know in a movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important for all our young listeners, if you get some people laughing, they're not laughing because they don't like it, or even if it's meant to be, they just have a reaction and they almost don't know how else to express it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you're saying, especially if it's someone that they know from every day at school and suddenly they're like being a gangster, that's going to be a comedic experience,
And can we just delve into the tech stuff? So you've got, who's shooting this movie?
So that was me, yeah. So I did all the production side of things. So I just had a camera. I just had this DV camera.
So we've got a Handycam, a DV Handycam camera, like with a flip-out screen, like as a tourist Handycam type thing.
You bet.
So focus, does all its own focus. Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the sound is being recorded by the camera?
By the camera as well, yeah. So if you're too far away, very bad sound. In fact, most of it was bad sound because a lot of it was windy,
And it's got no windshield.
Yeah, and I was good at getting coverage when it came to action sequences, but if it was two people talking, I found the idea of coverage quite laborious and not very exciting. So I would end up just filming like from a tracking shot, just walking backwards with the two people in a windy environment. There's too much distance between me and them, so anything you can hear is being like blown out by like. So it all sounded like garbage.
And again, your age at this point, roughly?
So this would have been, I would have been 12 going on 13.
Okay. But these are all, well, this is the preamble to the big one.
This is the preamble. Yeah.
Hit us with the big one.
So that stuff continued. I got more into, I'm condensing this all down, don't worry, I am getting onto the big one. But the important things is I continued doing stuff like that. In fact, I lent into the comedy for a long time. I sort of, I tried to become a bit more of the class clown, I think. I was like trying to live up to the laughter, which maybe was me protecting my ego, being like, oh yeah, no, it was all meant to be very funny. And probably wasn't. But I was making these wacky experimental films. I got really into visual effects, so I started teaching myself After Effects, Photoshop, and all that stuff. My parents very kindly helped me pay for the student Adobe program, which was the first sort of sign from them that they believed in me and wanted to encourage me being creative and pursuing it. Which was I can't overstate enough how sort of powerful and much of a driving force that is. And I know a lot of kids don't get that, and that sucks because it's almost like I was given permission. I think I probably would have found that permission within myself anyway, but the moment I got that from them, I didn't need it from anyone else. And I already knew I wanted to do it. So I had all these tools, was making all this stuff. It got weirder in terms of the films. There was teleportations, evil overlords, and all sorts of things.
Super, that you could make it happen because you could do the special effects.
Exactly.
Which is super exciting. So it's kind of like a magic trick, and you can make the magic trick happen.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And could I also, were you known as, in your class, were you like Filmmaker Dan? Did everyone was that your big hobby? Did you become known as that, or was it something that people didn't really know about?
I think not quite to the level of Filmmaker Dan. I probably was Filmmaker Dan by the end of school, but at that stage, I was probably that's Dan and he makes films, because I was also into sports and football and stuff like that. So I was sort of known by lots of people in lots of different realms. Too much to be Dan who makes films, or Dan the filmmaker, but Dan who also makes films for sure. And then what happened, that's when I actually got really sick in year 10, or it would have been just at the start of year 10. So end of year 9, start of year 10. That's when I was really sick. So I actually ended up being ill for most of year 10, which is a rubbish time because it's when you got your GCECs and stuff like that. That was a joke. They're obviously called GCSEs. But so suddenly I had this time and these tools and this passion, and it sort of made me feel like I'd been wasting time just making silly films. So it gave me a real sense of purpose, because there probably wasn't a very high chance I'd have died from being when I was ill, but there was a good enough chance that it was it felt like that was a very high possibility when I was that age,
Well, so it's almost a sort of what's important moment. You almost
exactly.
Hold on a second, if I don't live, what do I want to do?
100%. And I sort of found it was almost like it's not just a passion, it was also an escape as well, that I could sit there and write a script. Even though I'd written lots of scripts before, to write one that I was like, this is going to have people playing their own ages, which is possibly the first time I really did that. It's going to be serious, and it's going to be dark, and it's going to be scary, because I was, the films I mentioned earlier, that was sort of my formation films, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Jurassic Park are Star Wars less so, but they're pretty scary movies. So I was heavily influenced by that, and also Doctor Who. In fact, I missed out the bit where I used to film Doctor Who episodes starring, I think, myself as Doctor Who and my dad as just any villain. I'd paint him green. I'd sometimes paint him blue. He played the master at one point. He gave this very impressive monologue, and we used to film them at we went to Centre Parks a few times, and I'd film a movie at Centre Parks, like a new Doctor Who episode.
Actually, that must have been really fun, like family times. Actually, looking back from your dad's perspective,
yeah,
do that with your teenage son. That's a really bonding thing.
100%. I think he was devastated when I sort of phased him out.
You sacked him. Dad, sorry, you're done. We've got to get some other actors.
I joke. He actually still makes lots of appearances. So it definitely got slower, but I think just my filmmaking process got slower more than anything. It's shocking how many films he's still in and is involved in. Well, not shocking because he's so freaking talented.
Sign him up. Sign him up.
He's basically Tom Cruise. So I wrote this film when I was ill. So this was End. This is a film that I sort of came up with it. It was sort of like a Doctor Who inspired end of the world film. It was very big and very dramatic. You know, we talked about not doing a feature in a short. I don't know what this was. It's an epic, but I'd gotten a new camera just before this moment. So I got a new camera. This was the Canon HV20, which I know you know about because you had the HV30 or 40 in the office.
In the early days of Young Film Academy, we had that camera. Great little handicap, but good
Great
picture.
Camera.
Really good picture.
Brilliant picture. Really sharp. HD. I think it was my first HD camera. And it had a cinema mode. So it would do like progressive scans. So it felt like actual video rather than it sort of recording the top, then the middle, then the bottom of the screen. It would literally just shoot whole images. But I decided to take a big dump on that picture quality by buying one of these adapters that would screw onto the front of the HV20 so that I could put digital SLR lenses on the camera. Okay. There was a whole wave going on at this time where there were really good cameras, no matter how big, but you couldn't change the lenses on them. So all these companies were releasing these devices where you could put any sort of like Nikon or Canon lens and attach it to the front of your video camera, and it would essentially, the image would go onto a piece of glass that your camera is then shooting whatever that image is on the glass. Right. But I got the cheap version because I couldn't afford like £200 as a kid. And the cheap version didn't vibrate. It was meant to vibrate to stop all the dust and the dirt from being recorded. But that was the least of my worries because quite simply, James, it just wasn't in focus. It just, nothing. So I had this camera that would shoot these really beautiful, sharp images, and I just stuck a lens on the front, and the whole thing was just soft, like all of it.
And when did you discover that? Because
I think I could
or was
tell.
It like...
I could tell, but I was like, I didn't have a good point of reference, so I thought maybe that was fine.
I shot an entire movie on film, the old days of film, when you had to process film afterwards, and so you couldn't tell at the time because there was no way of playing back. Yeah. And it was an entire short film, and basically we had 2 days of the whole footage with one focus puller, and only weeks later, where everyone's gone home, and we got all the footage back, all soft.
Yeah,
all soft.
Yeah, it's devastating. It's devastating. I could tell though on my film that there were degrees of softness. So even though the main character is soft, everything else was softer. So I thought by process of elimination, it will still look like a movie, I guess. It will just look like a soft movie.
Vaseline lens.
Basically, yeah. Although, funny story, when we get onto screening it, it won an award. I submitted it to like one competition, and it won Best Young Filmmaker aged like 15 to 17.
Result 1 out of 1.
1 out of 1, and I spoke to them afterwards about the film, and they were like, yeah, we loved it. We loved the style of it. It felt really sort of mysterious, and it felt really sort of, it was like blurry at times and stuff like that. Like they really loved the fact that it was out of focus, thinking that it was an intentional act. So I just sort of stood there being like, oh, thank you. Yeah. It just deep down being like, that was a mistake.
That's great.
But yeah, so I pulled together 2 friends from school, Well, 3 friends, because someone had to play the monster, obviously, and it wasn't my dad this time. I can't remember why, but he wasn't available. I think it was too busy, doing the next Mission Impossible film. But so I filmed with them over maybe 3 weekends, because this is an epic short, James. There's lots of locations and stuff. I think I had one light. I didn't know what I was doing with the light. Now
it was a torch.
Yeah.
It was basically a torch. But you've done movies since with one light, Dan. I know this about you. You've shot a very good horror film in a set of caves that's extremely scary with one light. So
I did.
You're the master of one light.
Yeah. But that light, albeit that light from the cave movie was about 5 inches. This was one of those, it was like you screw a light bulb into this huge box, and then it illuminates the box and gives the softest, most pathetic light imaginable. But that was what lights were for indie filmmakers back in the day, just these like pop-out things where you screw the same light bulb you would have in your ceiling, except weaker, because it was back in the day. And I think I barely used it, to be honest. But yeah, it told this story of this girl who heads back home, and she doesn't realize that her parents are gone. And then her friend runs over, and he tells her that all their parents are gone. They've all disappeared, and they doesn't know what's happened. And party time. No, then there's no time to have fun. The TV starts messing up in sort of like a poltergeist fashion, and next thing they know, there's this creature in their driveway, and it kills him and goes after her.
This is too good. Pause on the creature. Okay, so the creature. So you're sitting there, you've got your mates. You're like, all right, lads, we've got a creature.
Mm-hmm.
So someone's going to play the creature. And you're thinking what? You're thinking don't show much? Is that your way of going? Or are you thinking a full-on suit? What?
Full-on suit. Full-on suit.
And now you've got to make a full-on suit.
Yes. Now, when I say creature, it was someone wearing all black.
Yeah, okay, good start. Yeah.
All black, and they had one of those white face masks, also from Poundland. There's sort of like plastic things. The idea is you paint the face mask, but we just had the creepy white face.
With the cutouts for the eyes and the mouth.
Cutouts for the eyes and the mouth, but just behind you just see blackness, so you couldn't really see what was happening. So yeah, just this thing just dressed in black and with a white face mask and like a balaclava, but sort of designed for paintball, so it would just protect the top and back of your head and the front of your neck. So it would just be this face sticking through, and the rest of them was completely covered in black. And I just went to my tallest friend I knew, so Duncan, and I asked him if he wanted to be the monster. And he said yes.
This is brilliant.
Yeah.
It was good. I mean, and did you have a sense of kind of not wanting to show too much of Duncan? Were you kind of savvy enough to know you needed little glimpses of Duncan versus a kind of wide shot where you could see the whole of Duncan? Or is there a big shot where you used to see it's a kid dressed in black with a white mask on?
But you don't, because the film's so blurry. So
clever.
You can't tell that it's someone wearing essentially 10 different pieces of clothing in order to create the illusion of a black suit or a black... what we're going for is like a morph suit, but with a bit more weight to it. But that's not an issue, because everything is... And it's color graded so that everything is just black. So it's just like an abyss, and then you've got the face. There is no teasing of the creature. It's just there. We weren't that savvy. We had too much of the story to get in there, James. So we couldn't milk that bit.
No, just Duncan. Just get on with it.
Just get on with it. Just suddenly be there. They went because they go out. By this point, James, we've already seen that the sun is like melting or discombobulating. Yeah. So like by that point, a creature's not even a big shock at this point. We're still in like minute 4 or 5 of the film as well. So it's a lot of stuff happens pretty quickly. And there's a night sequence after that where she discovers that her friend's been killed, and then she packs a bag and she leaves, James. she leaves.
And are you doing this like you're doing it the weekend? Like, how long is this taking you? And over kind of what period of time?
I think it was 3 weekends, probably only filming one day each of those weekends. And it's probably scattered over a 2-month period. I think we did 1 or 2 weekends back to back, and then there was one more day of filming for the second half of the film, and that was delayed a few times. I actually got cold feet once. I think I wasn't feeling too well, and I was really nervous and scared about it going wrong, I think. So I think I just pushed it back an extra week and pulled myself together. But I was nervous. I don't know why. I don't know what for. I think it's just, when you've already done quite a few days of filming, it's sort of tough. I think, by the way, we did have someone on sound by this point. I think someone had a little Zoom audio recorder. It was a Zoom H2 on a boom pole. So you'd have to sort of press record on the Zoom, and it had built-in microphones. So you'd then feed the pole through your hands, get the mic far away with headphone cable going all the way from the microphone to the ears. So I think I had someone doing that. But I think the third day I was doing that as well. So it was a little bit more pressure. But yeah.
Because the logistics is, often young people kind of go, when do you get everyone together? That's why just short films, if you get everyone together for a day and you can shoot the thing in the day, you're kind of done. And actually the problem for these projects is, as you discovered, that when they kind of go on for multiple weeks, then people just drop out, don't they?
Yeah.
It's not like they're being paid. There was a great story. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the greatest fan movie ever, supposedly, which is the story I think I've told before about these kids who in the 80s went and literally with a handy cam shot Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Indiana Jones movie, shot for shot with them as kids. They literally went off and tried to reinvent it. It took them I think they said 7 years or 8 years to complete it. So you can physically see the characters aging in the movie. And then the girl who plays the main lead, because it took so long, she just moved away. Yeah. So suddenly halfway through the movie, it just changes to a different girl.
Yeah,
but it's who cares? It's great. It's amazing.
I feel like the only thing that would have topped that is if she was pregnant, but then they were filming out of order, and then she's just fluctuating.
These are kids, Dan. Kids.
Oh, I see. Okay, sorry.
They're all
I apologise. I thought because it was filmed over so long that they started, they were married. You suddenly started to see the years. You suddenly started to see the years in their eyes.
Okay, great. So you shoot the end. Over a number of weekends.
Yeah.
You literally reached the end. And then how was post for you? What did you do to edit it, and how was that for you?
So that would have been in Adobe Premiere. I did the editing, the visual effects, the sound design, all of it. I was getting quite savvy at all of those things. Not to say I was great, but the editing feels like a movie by that point. It doesn't feel like someone that doesn't know what they're doing, but just not quite to the highest level, And I sort of, just worked on it on my computer. I probably had already edited everything else from the film, so I don't think it was too long of post-production and stuff. And I was a big fan of Video Copilot, which is great tutorials on After Effects and stuff like that. So that, sorry, that had lots of sound effect packs. In fact, I use Pro Scores, which we use in at Young Film Academy, so I used that for a lot of the sound design work. It was great.
Because a lot of that was the time when kind of I remember this, that sort of sound effect libraries were very expensive, and they were owned by these big and you could never get them. So getting sound effects was a real problem. And then slowly you could buy for sort of, for 20 quid, you could kind of buy a big old library of sound effects. And I remember that being a really transformative moment, because the sound design elements just allowed so much more cool stuff that you could do. Yeah. And it sounded like real movies. And in fact, you probably had this where you recognize, you watch a movie and hold on a second, that's the door sound I just used. Or, or that's gun number 3.
There's gun. Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's a lot of that with the sound effects, but also the non-diegetic sounds as well. You would start to notice a lot of the same risers. I think I noticed a lot of the risers and stuff in Doctor Who as well. And the muzzle flashes too. I spotted loads of those. I think some of them were used in Call of Duty as well. Yeah. Have been used in video games. And Yeah, I can't remember about the music. The music's the only thing that I'm not sure about. I very quickly found someone online who was really interested in composing. I literally just searched for like original piano compositions, found someone on YouTube that just uploaded videos of them making music, and I reached out to them saying, do you want to make some music for a film? And they said yes. So that was really cool.
Amazing.
And I was already really influenced by Lord of the Rings. I had all these like deep bass rumbles as well. So it was a 4D experience watching these films, because, if you had any kind of subwoofer in your house, it was probably broken after watching one of these films.
This is great. So you've done the hard work of actually finishing. You've got your movie.
Yeah.
You're how old now?
So by the time it was finished, I probably would have been 15.
15.
Yeah.
And so what do you do? What happens to the end? Is that the end?
No, I put it on YouTube because by this point, I actively was getting into YouTube and uploading the most randomest of content. Anything from tutorials, all the films I was making, some weird and wacky films. I was doing like unboxing videos, reaction videos, just anything. I was just loving making content by this point. So I put it on YouTube, and that was all I sort of did. And then I heard that like a cousin of mine or something had won a young photography competition, and I think I was probably a little bit jealous. And so I Googled filmmaking competitions to be like, I can do that. And and then I submitted it to one, and then it got nominated. It was in Belfast. It's called the Cinemagic Film Festival. It was sponsored by Coca-Cola at the time. And me and my parents and Lily, so I should mention, so Lily, who's the lead actress in the film, also helped organize the film and everything. So she co-produced it with me. So her and her family, we all went to Belfast to watch this award ceremony.
Oh my God, and that is key. Tell us about that, because I think that experience as a young person, especially when you kind of, once the film is done, you almost think it's finished. And it's kind of what our Project Paradiso students are experiencing, because they're about to have the premiere of their film and the Italian premiere in Syracuse in Sicily, and some of the students are going for it. And it's exactly this thing where you go out of your comfort zone and you're suddenly in a foreign place that you don't know, and people are watching your movie, and it can be such a seminal moment. So what was it like for you?
Probably terrifying, to be honest. Yeah, I was terrified. I had to, because I didn't know what bit of the film they'd chosen to show, because they were showing like clips from each of the films. Obviously, there was a screening the other day, like the day before the award ceremony, so we were there for 2 days. So I saw the other films that were nominated, and I thought there was another film that was maybe better than my film. So I really wasn't thinking I was going to win at all. I was just excited to be there and nominated, thinking, oh, well, I'll just have to do this more times, more often, and submit to more competitions. And yeah, so when they showed the clip in the award ceremony, I was like, oh, they've chosen a great clip. They had actually called me a couple of days before to check I was coming, which is sometimes a giveaway.
Good sign. Always tip for young filmmakers, go to festivals, because if you turn up, they're much more likely to make you win, because you don't want people to not be there when you give awards out. It's a bit of a damp squib. Yeah. If you can.
Absolutely. So yeah, that was a positive sign. And then, I won. So yeah, me and Lily went up, collected the award, met a guy called Terry Bamber, who I'm maybe still in loose contact with. Spoken to him in a few years, but he was a production manager on a bunch of James Bond films, so that was really cool.
Amazing. So you had that sense. You must have had that sense. So you're sort of 15, 16 at this point, and you're kind of you're getting validation, I suppose.
Yeah.
You're getting people saying, well done, you've made a film, we like it, it's good, it's won this award. And I suppose, do you look back at that and wonder if that was a sort of pivotal moment for you in terms of identity and determination?
Yeah, I feel like I still remember walking down the stairs to because it was in a cinema, which is a great place to host awards, because you're literally right there, in the home of movies. I think I still remember walking down the stairs when I knew I wanted to do it. My parents, when they sort of helped me get this software, told me that I could, and that was a moment that felt like it was possible, and that, what's the right word? It was, that told me that I was good enough. So it's like, I want to do it, you can do it, and you're capable, but then it's like, no, you actually are good enough to do this.
So cool.
So sort of, I think definitely from that moment onwards, I probably never considered another career.
Because you were hooked. You were sort of hooked on going, I love doing. I mean, it's such a great story to hear, Dan, because, Young Film Academy was part of the reason we founded Young Film Academy was because when I was, after the film I talked about in the previous episode that we made when we were 16, 17 years old, then I went on to make lots of other short films and other films. And I was going to these sort of young filmmakers events, supposedly, and everyone was my age now and they were bald. And they, if you were in your mid-40s and you'd just made a film, you were kind of a young filmmaker. That was pretty young, because there was no way for kids to start doing this stuff early. Yeah. And once the digital revolution happened, you were those kids who wanted to get out there and do it and start learning. And by the time they knew what they wanted to do to some degree, by the time they're 15, 16, 17, they wanted to be making stuff. And so Young Film Academy was founded to help them develop skills, meet like-minded people, have experiences like the one that you had, like the one that the Paradiso students are about to have, that can really impact a life and sort of put a marker in the sand.
Yeah.
And you remember them because we're so impressionable at that age, right? We're like wet concrete.
Yeah.
And what you put there sticks, in a way that maybe sometimes later in life it doesn't stick quite so much. So it's a beautiful thing. We've always said you were kind of you were the Young Film Academy student before Young Film Academy was there. So, it would have been fun to help you, Dan, but you were before our time.
Absolutely. I think as well, it's such a exciting time to create stuff now, because the hurdles that, albeit do make for good stories, they are out the way enough that you can focus on telling good stories.
Totally.
Like I probably missed
access is just so much easier.
Yeah, like even though I had the software and all this stuff and I was getting good at it, I missed out all the bits where my computer would crash because it wasn't actually good enough to run the software. You'd try and play back.
We had that.
I did an edit. Yeah, I'd try and press play and it would do about like 3 or 4 seconds and then just start being juddery. So I was like, I could only check the sequence like in a few seconds at a time because the computer just wasn't good enough to handle the HD footage with the effects and stuff,
But it's also, isn't it, that now, yes, like for now, a young person today who is 15, 16 or 12 or 10 or whatever it might be, and by the way, that is the age, right, of any other thing, any sports or other arts or music, when you speak to someone who's a world leader in this thing and you say, when did you start? They never say, well, I was kind of 22 when I thought about it. They always say I started when I was 6, 8, 10. By the time I was 12, I was winning a war. I was doing things. That's always the journey. So that's what's so exciting about hearing about young people do it. But yes, you can get hold of a camera now on your phone that's a super duper 4K, this, that, and the other is an amazing camera, gives you a great picture. And yes, you can record sound and you can do all the technical stuff so much more easy. You can edit and, it's all fine. But you still need the storytelling. And you still need the craft skills and you need the human skills and you need the network and the connection. So I remember in the early days of Young Film Academy, it's like these young people had the means, but they would then go out and because they didn't know how to use them, they wouldn't use them very well. They'd get disheartened by the results that they were getting. Yeah. And then they walked away from it.
Yeah. No,
so it's about harnessing both, isn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I always like to remind people, people hire people, so that do not neglect those human skills. That's not to say, I was definitely like a bit of a keyboard warrior. I spent a lot of time playing video games and teaching myself the software and all this creative stuff. But I was still social and everything as well at the same time. Now, I appreciate, you might come into film because you're less into the social side of things, or social side of life, so you were just going to focus on the creative stuff, and that's fine. But just do give yourself the opportunity to teach yourself how to speak to people. There's literally books on how to speak to people, how to win friends and influence people. That's a good book. Yeah. I would focus on what it is you enjoy doing for now, but if you do want to go into it, then do give yourself the opportunity to connect with people better down the line,
Yeah. So you were sort of like a Gareth Edwards style. And Gareth Edwards was the British director who kind of did Monsters, which is this amazing movie, which he was basically you, Dan. He shot it himself. He wrote it himself. He edited himself. He did all the special effects himself because he was a whiz on that. He took a couple of people out to Mexico where basically he took them into a jungle and shot loads of stuff in Mexico with his mates wandering around a jungle, and then did all the special effects back home, made it into a thing that felt like a kind of blockbuster, and it did really well, Monsters. And then he went on to direct super big stuff,
Yeah. I think he actually used one of those adapters that let you put the lenses on a HD camera. Yeah.
Did he get a soft effect as well?
No, his was much better because he had one that vibrated, I think. So he actually had a proper one. I had a cheap one off eBay for like 80 quid.
But
whereas these things were like basically 200. Yeah. Just, 150 quid short of making Monsters.
And so I suppose, to start to wrap this up, what's your looking back on those early projects, the end, that first experience? I suppose what were the key lessons do you think that you took away from those, or the things that kind of influenced you most moving forward?
Telling stories that you're passionate about and really care about. Because I think those are the ones you'll be most proud of looking back and moving as you move forward, Make something worthwhile. Like, it's fun making the fun stuff for fun. But then once those jokes no longer resonate in the same way, then you're sort of just left with what's something that embodies the learning experience, but not something you necessarily look back on and are like pleased with. They sort of occupy a different space in your life. So I think if you can spend your time making a film that you actually think's important in some way, and it could be a funny film.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
That's not to say
it
don't
doesn't
do
have
comedy.
To be serious. Yeah,
yeah, no, absolutely. But tell something that is a story that you're really excited to share with people, and then I think you'll hopefully want to distance yourself from it less once you've made it.
Yeah, super cool. Well, how inspiring, Dan! And thanks for sharing at the end.
No worries. Yeah, I know. You can. It's still on YouTube. You can check it out.
Well, and let us just end by saying you also, because you did a music video that had 1 million hits on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
How old were you when you did that?
Oh, that was that would have been just after End. Actually, it was just after. Filmed at the same house as End was, and just in a dried out pond. Just got my friend was in a band. In fact, George, who was the main guy in the Vietnam film, he was then in a band
in the forest.
Yeah, in the forest.
But it is Vietnam because you say underneath on the subtitle
it clearly states Vietnam in the subtitles, James. So anyone that's confused or questioning the ecology of the forest is, it's
just read
a spoil sport.
Yeah. That's me, but I mean that's incredible. To get 1 million views must have been amazing.
Yeah.
And I suppose my thoughts to wrap this up, and it's been super fun, by the way. I've loved taking a trip down memory lane. Thank you so much for taking a trip down memory lane with us and discussing these stories in more depth, because they are the juvenilia, they are the beginnings, and the students of Young Film Academy, or any aspiring creatives out there who may be listening to this pod, I think the big note that I'd finish with is this is how it always starts.
Yeah.
Because there is a real sense, I think, in any young person that they watch stories of big behind the scenes on big shows or whatever, and you're like, wow, look at all the people, look at all the gear, look at the taxis bringing the actors to set, look at all the trailers, and you're like, my silly film in the back garden is not that.
Yeah.
It's a different thing. But here's the thing, people. Everyone who goes on to do that starts in their back garden. Like
100%.
There is nobody in the world who starts off and someone goes, oh, fantastic, kid, how old are you? You're 13, want to make a movie? No problem. We got a budget, £100,000. Let's get the people in, get the crew. I mean, it just doesn't happen.
Actually, it happened to my cousin, actually. I'm joking. It obviously didn't.
So you've got to start, that whether you are Robert Rodriguez, who's making Desperado and he's doing it the weekend with his mates, and then that gets remade and then it becomes a big Hollywood hit, and then or whether you're Steven Spielberg doing your World War II epic in your garden with your mother playing Hitler, everyone has some version of the stories that you and I were telling. Mm-hmm. If they go on to sort of to make a career and successful in these things. That's not to say just because you did it, you will be successful. But
yeah.
I think the common denominator of everyone who does will have some story like this. And sometimes it's not necessarily in the world of film, right? Sometimes it's people saying, we've had people on this pod, very successful people within their field, saying some form of like, well, I was drawing cartoons, or I was, there's other ways to express yourself. But often you have a thing about starting, but you've got to start and just do it. And don't worry how ropey it feels. Don't worry about whatever the production values are, but do it and finish it, and then learn from it, and then do another one, and then do another one, and do another one. And that's how you end up in a position where you look back and go, wow, I'm here, but I started somewhere. And I think always remember that those sets as well that you look at and you go, wow, it must be amazing. Once you get to a certain stage, there isn't all the trouble that I'm having on my independent little set. And there's this phrase in there, the cavalry is not coming.
Absolutely.
Because actually it's never as easy as it looks. It's still all the same problems, just often bigger and harder and more difficult to fix.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wise words, James Walker.
So
Wise words.
There's some people who can listen to that and go, well, that sounds terrible. That sounds just like mine.
I hope so.
It's like showing our dirty underwear, Dan.
Yeah. No, it is. It is for sure. I feel humiliated.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's been great to be humiliated with you. Thanks so much for having me on. I've loved it.
This has been amazing. Thank you, James. And we'll see you guys in a podcast soon. Thanks for listening. Ciao, 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 ciao.